Can you remember the first time you heard any music by Elliott Carter, and what did you think of it then?
I guess the first time I heard Elliott Carter's music was here in Boston, as far as I can recollect. Um,
Were you playing it, or were you listening
I
to
was
somebody?
playing. I was playing, and you know, the thing about playing his music is you tend to be very involved in playing his music because it's very challenging, and so I remember being kind of involved in the intricacies of the harp part, and his music is such that I think it grows on you upon first hearing. I don't think I necessarily was so infatuated with it, but the more I heard it and the more I played it, I began to understand it more and to like it more.
In some ways, the players are lucky because they necessarily have to get to know it before they can play it, and the audience hears it only once.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true.
He's written a lot of music for harp, surprisingly. I mean, that is harp parts in orchestral
Exactly.
pieces. There's only one piece for a solo harp, but you say you haven't played that.
I have not played it. It's called Bariolage, and I have coached it. I have students who have played it, but I've never played it myself.
What interests you about that piece?
Well, it's kind of like the piece that I'm going to be playing this summer. It's very challenging for the harp. He writes a lot of pedal changes and a lot of difficult rhythms, but in the end, it's all very, very interesting listening, I think. It's very compelling.
He thinks it's very important to write according to the nature of every instrument and idiomatically. And he has said that that piece and some of his other harp writing was influenced by his close friendship with Salzedo. Would you like to say who Salzedo was and then say whether or not you think this is true?
Yes, Salzedo was a famous harpist back in the early 20th century. He ended up dying in 1961. He taught at the Curtis Institute of Music and was a legendary figure in the harp world, both as a teacher and as a composer. He wrote a lot of music for harp, and he started kind of a method of harp playing called the Salzedo method of playing. And a lot of the music that he wrote had a certain style to it. It had a lot of exploration of new techniques of playing the harp, new sounds, new ways of playing the harp, so that it took it from the delicate parlor room instrument into an instrument with a lot of ability to do a lot of other things. I mean, the harp has always played harmonics and that kind of thing, but now you could play thunder effects and banging on the sounding board and a lot of different effects, which I think that Carter uses also. The piece that I'm going to be playing at Tanglewood this summer, called Mosaic, was dedicated to Salzedo, and when I saw that, I thought, uh-oh. This is going to be a challenge, and of course it is.
I think you get to play percussion in it too.
That's right.
And he's also very concerned that although he knows his music is difficult, he wants it to be practical. And when you look at the score of this piece you're playing this summer, I mean, there are chords that have 8 notes in it, but unless I have miscounted, you only have 5 fingers.
Well, actually, we only have, we have 8 because we have 5 fingers on each hand, but we never use the 5th one. So we have 4 fingers on each hand, but so that requires a lot of crossing over, you know, so you don't just play the 8 notes, but you have to cross over.
What do you mean by crossover?
Well, say like a pianist would cross over like that, so the harpist would cross over like that too.
So you have to do that in this piece?
Yes.
But that's a fairly standard.
That's fairly standard. There's a lot of other things that are not quite so standard.
Such as?
Well, there's a lot of pedal work. I mean, when I first looked at the piece, I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be impossible. But, you know, you chip away at it bit by bit, and it starts out with playing, I believe it's 5 notes in one hand against 2 in the left hand, and there's a lot of rhythmic play and a lot of pedal work, as I said. But, you know, when I first started, I thought, gee, this is really complicated. And it is. But once you learn it, you begin to understand that even though it's difficult, it all works.
Mm-hmm. What about from the expressive point of view? That is, we've talked about it from the point of view of technique. Do you find a great variety of mood and texture and so on in Carter?
Absolutely, absolutely. In this one piece, it goes from being very lively and energetic to being very kind of quiet and soulful, and again, a very, very wide range of tone colors, from the very percussive, aggressive sounds to, at the end, it's a very almost melodic, slow kind of disappearing.
Mm-hmm. It's almost a mini concerto for harp in some respects. It's clearly you're the star of this piece.
That's right. Yeah, I mean there are bars and bars. I mean the harp starts the piece by itself,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of cadenzas that are just for solo harp.
Mm-hmm. Were you around when the orchestra did the piano concerto?
Yes, I believe the piano concerto did not have a harp part, though.
To compose for orchestra, as far as I am concerned, is to deal particularly and practically with the instruments, writing idiomatic passages for them, and particularly to compose music whose very structure and character are related to the instruments that play it. The entrance, register, sound of an oboe or a solo viola must be a matter of formal and expressive signification for the whole piece. The combinations of instruments are as much a compositional consideration as the material they play. Has this been your experience of playing the harp in the orchestral pieces of Carter?
Yeah, again, it's kind of the way I was saying about the Mosaic piece.
Mm-hmm.
He for his orchestral works, he doesn't use the harp quite as extensively,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll find like a little flurry of activity at one point and a lot of notes, which provide a lot of color.
Mm-hmm.
So the harp, I think, is used more to color what's going on around it, but it's not used so much for the way that, say, for example, the winds would be, which is more expressive work. So we're just for effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, in a way, Carter's orchestral pieces are kind of like a kaleidoscope. It's constantly shifting and turning, and there's almost no place in any of them where everybody is playing at the same
That's
time.
right.
And so it is like a kaleidoscope of colored. They're not fragments because they're interconnected somehow. They make patterns, and you're a part of this kaleidoscope.
That's right. Yeah, you'll find a lot of times, you know, the harp part leads to the celeste part or leads to the percussion part. So it's like a flurry of oftentimes very fast high notes
Mm-hmm.
to provide a certain flurry of color.